It is a midweek, a hump day edition of Birds 365. You got your Mac guys, Jody McDonald and John McMullen, to hang with you for the next 2 hours. Should be a nice summer day. Mr. McMullen, how are you on this fine Wednesday?
Doing well, Jody. Tried to get into a little baseball last night. Can't do it. Want to thank Rob Manfred for that. Want to get that off my chest. I don't know who makes decisions in Major League Baseball, but I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan
of baseball or what's going on.
No, I love baseball. I grew up with. I'm like you, but they have tried to run people off, and I can't, for the life of me, I can't understand who is making decisions in Major League Baseball. I can't understand it.
I'm going to take Rob Manfred's. Well, I am, and I'm not going to take Rob Manfred's back. What we've seen the last 2 days since they've instituted this sticky substance breakdown with umpires and the like, I'm not putting on them. I'm putting on the cheating pitchers. Some of the guys, including Max Scherzer last night against the Phillies, you would think that he was being dragged off to jail because they asked to check his glove and his hat. Did you see that idiot Sergio Romo on the A's last night?
I did. I'm with Sergio.
How is that, Rob Manfred?
First of all, there's a long history. I'm not a big. I don't care about cheating. I don't care about steroids. I don't care about Bill Belichick. I don't care about Gaylord. Think about Gaylord Perry back in the day. I don't care. There was a part of that was part of the romanticism of actual baseball, the spitball, whatever you want to call it. Loaded bats we've had. Look, I'm not saying when you start talking about a loaded bat, for instance, that's where I draw the line. When you start talking about tricks of the trade, like people in Philadelphia,
put them all back on steroids. Is that what you're saying?
I don't care. I don't care for this reason, Jody. Look at it from a Hall of Fame perspective. I saw the best player of a generation and the best pitcher of a generation banned essentially by Hall of Fame voters. They're not in the Hall of Fame. So that Hall of Fame is meaningless to me because you have these people like me, journalists, judging, okay, I know what Barry Bonds did. I don't know what the damn pitchers did that were throwing to Barry Bonds. You think they weren't juiced up as well? If you want to put a plaque up and say this is the steroid era and try to educate people, I have no problem with that. But to keep the best players out because of a moral judgment, I'm not a fan of that.
That's what rules are all about. We have rules in life, we have rules in sports, and if that makes us moral judges, so be it.
Is holding cheating in the NFL?
No, that's just an in-game infraction.
People do it on purpose. Is that cheating?
I think they try and get away with it, but I don't think anybody does it on purpose, knowing that they're going to get caught. If they knew they were going to get caught,
well, of course, if they knew they were going to get caught, they wouldn't do it. I talked to offensive linemen.
But when you get caught, you get penalized. They throw the flag and they back it up 15 yards. If you take steroids, if you use illegal substances, if you get caught, there's a price to be paid.
That's fine. I don't care about the penalty. Now, if you talk about somebody's legacy and you're going to try to tell me Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens, even Pete Rose, who did nothing against the game, aren't Hall of Fame players because of things they did off the field. It's not a Hall of Fame for best people. It's a Hall of Fame for best baseball players. It's a museum of the game. So that's part of it. If you talk about Bill Belichick, look, in NASCAR, they say if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. You try by hook or by crook. That's where that cliche came from. To win a football game, to win a baseball game, to win a basketball game. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, this is out of bounds. This isn't out of bounds. You can cheat this way, but you can't cheat that way. That's what you have the officials for. That's
bring the steroid guys back, get them all juiced up again.
Guess what? They never left, Jody.
Don't have rules. Why would you have rules
never left
in a game of sports?
You think they removed steroids from baseball? They're in baseball. growth hormone's bigger than steroids. People don't even know what growth hormone is in a steroid. You think performance enhancing drugs have been barred from baseball? There are guys juiced up right now.
I think it is significantly less than it once was because they cracked down and implemented drug testing.
They did a good job.
I think the percentage is minuscule as to what it used to be.
Well, I disagree with that, but you know, when you talk about, they've done a good PR job. You know, I've done a lot of work with steroid testing, from everything from pro wrestling, which, you know, I'm a fan of, to bodybuilding, where it is like a huge part of the sport for guys, you know, even in football, where people would say, well, that guy's fat. You know, I covered Pat Williams for a number of years, just a big 330-pound guy. And they say, well, he got caught for performance enhancing drugs at one point. And people would say, well, he's fat. He's not taking performance enhancing drugs. They're doing it for different reasons. In pro wrestling, you do it for the look. So right. You're trying to build up your body. In football, you do it for the strength. And Pat Williams is one of the strongest guys in the entire NFL. He's using them for a different reason. My larger point, we got down this rabbit hole, is you don't know who did them and you don't know who didn't do them. So you can say, okay, whoever got caught, and you know the baseball report, the Mitchell report, which is essentially, I call it the cut and paste report, because he took everybody else's work and just put it in a big volume. There are so many names in that are nobodies, absolute nobodies playing Major League Baseball. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about them. Nobody cares.
But if his job was to investigate everyone, he's going to
no. But my point is,
all the names that they are, not just the all-star players, but all the players who he found evidence of them cheating.
Here's my point, Jody. If Jason Grimsley is gassed up, and on a Tuesday night in San Francisco, he strikes out Barry Bonds, which probably never happened, but because he never struck out, especially late. Nobody knows. Was it the steroids that enabled him to get Barry Bonds out? I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows. But people are very comfortable judging Barry Bonds because, number one, he's a terrible human being. He was horrible to people he dealt with, but he was a great baseball player, and I'm not going to say he wasn't. And I'm not going to keep him out of the museum of baseball. But the bigger point with Rob Manfred is, look, the analytics have ruined the game. We know that. The launch angle. People are talking about Max Scherzer last night. He had a low rotation rate, spin rate. I don't give a crap about spin rate. So that's number one. But number two, then you're stopping the game more with these stupid rules, upsetting the players, upsetting the managers. It's just terrible. And I used to love the sport. That's the problem, Jody. I used to love the sport, and they are pushing me away from it.
Well, I think the sport had to react because the players were deciding to build a better mousetrap, to come up with a better substance to cheat with. Rules well in place, well before this year. You're not allowed to use illegal substances. That's been the case forever. And they're just enforcing the rules that have already been in place. And the reason that they've got to get as drastic is because, to the players' credit, they're cheating better. They're making a better effort. They're coming up with better substances to cheat with. So MLB had to up its game to try and catch them from cheating so they can keep some integrity in the game.
We talked to Connor Orr about unintended consequences. Max brought this up last night. So if he hits somebody in the head with a 95-mile-an-hour fastball because he can't get a grip on the baseball, what about that unintended consequence?
Well, then here's what I would suggest to Max Scherzer. If he wasn't able to get a good enough grip on the ball last night, why was that? Could it be because could it be because he had been cheating previously and now Major League Baseball, which, oh, by the way, the thing that I'm most critical of baseball is they made an announcement that they're going to crack down. They didn't implement it for almost 2.5 weeks. They said, we're going to go through it. We're going to come up with a punishment. We're going to implement. And it took them 2.5 weeks to do so. Well, there was a very obvious reason why they did it. They wanted the cheaters to stop and get used to pitching without the substances that they've been using. And that's exactly what's transpired. When Max Scherzer says, I couldn't grip the ball well enough, and I came up and him to Alex Bohm, so don't blame me if I hit Alex Bohm in the head. Well, why'd you ever start cheating in the first place, Max? Why did you get to a point where you had to have a foreign substance to be able to grip the ball to your liking?
Well, number one, if everybody cheats, is it cheating?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll disagree with that. So you're going to take now, maybe because there is no offense in baseball, maybe they want to slow things down for the pitchers who are dominating. So, I got that with Bob.
That's pretty much it, Johnny Mac. Good call by you.
I got that with Bob Gibson, when they had to lower the pitching mound back in the day because he was too dominant. So, but here's my point, and you can use this in society as general. If you already have rules in place, you start to over-legislate. Been one of my many criticisms of the NFL. It's just a terribly over-legislated game. If you're Joe Girardi and you think Max Scherzer's using something, and he's got something in his cap, there was no 2.5 week rule. You could have went to the umpire and said, I think he's got Vaseline. I think he's got an emery board. Go check him. It was already in place. You don't have to slow down a game that's already too slow and you've already lost a younger generation. That the laws were already in place. Already there, Jody. So
right.
what are we doing?
So what did Joe Girardi do wrong last night?
But he didn't do anything wrong. I'm not saying Joe. I'm saying it was already in place. I'm saying you don't have to. These umpires on occasion are just checking pitchers coming off all over the league because of the mandate 2.5 weeks ago. I'm saying the legislation already existed. It was in the hands of the managers. They could do what they want with it. And if they say, I think so-and-so, I think Garrett Cole's got an emery board, you go out and check for an emery board. I think so-and-so has a loaded bat, you go x-ray the bat. It's always been there. Right. Why are they slowing the game down even further?
Oh, but if you're going to go out there and say, please check them, you're slowing the game down. Which is more important, the extra 45 seconds to check and see if a guy's got a foreign substance on him?
You don't see the redundancy of having something already in place and creating something else that even slows it down more. Look, there's no question, because a lot of these guys, it kind of legislated itself, because a lot of these guys, one of the most famous rules infractions ever was the pine tar game with Billy Martin. You know that. Maybe younger fans don't know that. I always thought they handled that wrong. I said, to me, it's like Bill Belichick, who came up with the formational tricks against the Baltimore Ravens, and he came up with the clock draining trick in the fourth quarter. Look, he found a loophole. Good for him. Afterwards, you fix the loophole, and that's what the NFL did. I rarely criticize the NFL. And in baseball, guess what? Billy Martin, he found this arcane rule that didn't mean anything. Nobody else knew it. He won a game for his team, and they talked about, I don't know, the spirit of the rule or some kind of crap of that. No, you say, you tip your cap to Billy Martin, and you say, afterwards, we're going to fix this. This is not what we meant. So my point is, guys are always trying to win, and they will do anything humanly possible to win. If you find an issue afterwards, redundancy isn't an issue. They already had something in place to deal with this. Now, one of the biggest issues, I think you have to agree with me on this, Jody, with younger people, is they can't sit and watch a baseball game. And you're making it more difficult for them to watch a baseball game. That's my problem. Right. That's my problem.
What it comes down to is a judgment. Which do you think is tuning people out more? The length of games or the fact that it's 2-1 because the pitchers are stone cold dominating? And that's the way it's been in Major League Baseball this season. The batting averages are way down. The ERAs are up. The strikeouts are way up. The game is not offensive generated the way that it's being played this year. And baseball is always self-analyzing itself and trying to figure out why that is the case. They have a perfect game that they would like to present, and they're going to try and do what it takes to present that game that they think is best for their entire population, both their older fan base and their younger fan base.
And that's what I don't understand, because Theo Epstein was the guy, and I give him all the credit in the world. Look, Theo Epstein was trying to win, and he won at an unbelievable level. He broke two curses, the two biggest curses in baseball history. And he admitted last year, I think it was last year, he admitted, look, I'm part of the problem for going the analytics route, for making the game less entertaining, for preaching launch angle. And the fact, you say pitchers dominate. They do dominate statistically, but are they dominating, or is it the fact that people are teaching the game wrong and worried about launch angle, not worried about station-to-station baseball, worried about the odds that say you're more likely to hit a 3-run home run than get 3 consecutive singles, which I think is great. But if you sacrifice bunt, if you get somebody over, small sample size, we all know the argument. He admitted, look, I'm part of the problem. This game is not as entertaining. This game is not entertaining because of what we and people like Theo Epstein have done to the game. He understands that. He's now working with Major League Baseball. They got to change, Jody. But here's the thing. As I said, it's the organization's jobs, individual organizations. Their job is to win every game possible. But it's the league's job to keep the game popular, to keep the fans engaged. So if somebody comes up, if they're counting cards at the casino and they found them, change the rules.
Right.
Change the rules.
And that's what baseball did this year by implementing.
No, I'm not talking about over legislation. I'm not talking about over. I'm saying nobody ban the shift. Say 2 infielders got to be on one. Easiest fix in the history of the world. 2 infielders got to be on one side. 2 infielders got to be on the other side. Easiest fix in the world. They're worried about redundant tackiness rules. I don't get the Major League Baseball office. Their eye is not on the prize of making the game more popular. That's the goal. That should be the goal.
I disagree with you. I think what they're doing is an attempt to improve their game, and they felt they needed to get it done now, slowly as they drag their feet, but they have gotten it done. And
have you seen the press
and the players who are, and the ones who are probably complaining are probably not cheaters. Chances are Max Scherzer's not a cheater. He doesn't need to cheat. He's just that good and just that talented. But the pitchers coming off the mound acting like petulant childs because the umpires are taking 30 seconds to check their glove and hat is not helping baseball at all. That's on the players. That's not on Rob Manfred.
I don't. Well, I know Max Scherzer's spin rate was down, so people think he's a cheater. I know Garrett Cole's spin rate is down, so people think the best pitchers in baseball are cheaters.
Yeah, they might.
I know people think the Houston Astros are cheaters, even though the New York Yankees were cheating and the Boston Red Sox. And oh, by the way, everybody else, Jody, because everybody steals signs. So who gives a you know what?
Well, the Astros have a world championship that they're never going to have to give back. So more power to them. They got away with it. But the fact that baseball did attempt to punish them, at least in part, I think is them doing their job. All right, we're doing our job here on Birds 365. We're going to get back into the football. Dave Zangaro of NBC Sports Philadelphia will hop aboard. Yes, Eagle fans, we promise. Eagle Talk coming right here on Birds 365.
I get scared sometimes.
Of a lot of things.
Joining in.
Decisions.
The dark.
The dark.
But I once heard someone say,
But as I always say,
it's okay to be afraid.
As long as you face the fear.
And keep moving forward.
Wherever you are in life, count on the name trusted in insurance for over 80 years. Independence Blue Cross.
The savoring taste of a good bag of beef jerky is so enjoyable at any time of the day, as long as you can find it. Here's what we suggest. Pure Bull beef jerky is our answer, and soon it will be yours. Locally produced in the Philadelphia region, this high-quality, healthy protein snack is easy to secure. Go to steersnacks.com and you'll see hot garlic, tropical heat, Pure Bull dry rub, and our favorite, Huck and Fod. What's that? Huck and Fod. Go now to steersnacks.com.
Welcome to the Wildwoods, the perfect place where you can safely do everything or nothing at all. Catch a wave, take a nap, go for a drive, grab a bite. It's your vacation, and we're doing everything we can to make it a safe one. The Wildwoods. Your vacation, your way.
The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 98, is a proud sponsor of The Labor Show with J. Doc and Krause every Saturday night from 6 till 8 p.m. IBEW Local 98's highly trained and superbly skilled electricians are the best in the business, setting the highest safety standards in the electrical industry. So when you're planning your next industrial, commercial, or residential project, choose an IBEW Local 98 union contractor. Learn more at IBEW98.org.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
This is a key. It's a family tree. It's a pair of wings. It's a secret handshake. And a ticket to anywhere in the world. It's more than a uniform. It's the door to a world most people only dream of. There's Strong, and then there's Army Strong. Try it on at GoArmy.com.
Wednesday edition of Birds 365 with your Accomack guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald. We are adding a third individual for insight here on this Wednesday get-together. It is our buddy from NBC Sports Philly, NBCSportsPhilly.com, Mr. Dave Zangaro. Dave, how's the summer treating you so far?
It's treating me pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Doing well, Dave. Good to see you. You're a big vacation guy, but obviously the pandemic has affected traveling. Do you have anything planned for the dead time?
Yeah, nothing great. I mean, it's still gonna be great. I'm heading to Maine at the end of this week. Right. Just for a week. It should be fun. Headed to do some outdoorsy type stuff. Yeah, it's been tough for me. You know that, like I'm normally out of the country, but it's just too tough right now to pull off some of those trips. So I'll stay in the States, and then next year I'll do some big trips again.
Now, you're talking to a guy who has been vacationed in Maine several times. My wife, her father, my father-in-law, may rest in peace, is from Maine. So we did summers up there a ton of years over the last 25. Where exactly in Maine are you going?
Yeah, we're going to first to Baxter State Park, all the way kind of north a little bit, and then we're coming back to Acadia on the way back.
Yeah, both of those more northern than I did. We get about a quarter of the way into the state, and that's enough. We don't need to fight with Canadians. This is far enough into Maine for us. We'll stop here just north of Portland. But it is a great state and a great time to be there, because even in the summers, it's not all that hot. So enjoy, have a good time. But when you come back, the Eagle season will be that much closer. We're 80 days away from kickoff. They've had their workouts, none of them mandatory, in this lead up to camp before this summer downtime. Did they accomplish what they needed to accomplish in your eyes?
Well, it was better than nothing, and that was kind of what they were looking at. They were looking at nothing because the NFLPA kind of pushed teams to not show up to these voluntary practices. So I actually think it was a pretty big win for Nick Sirianni to even have some semblance of an OTAs. I don't think it's look. I think anytime on the field, especially for a new coach, new offensive coach, new defensive coach, all that helps. So I don't think it's as good as if like they had a normal off season and they had all the OTAs and the mandatory minicamp, but it was better than nothing. And I think that time is valuable. And it was, to me, honestly, it was the first little hurdle that Nick Sirianni's had as the head coach, because it's not a huge hurdle, but it's something, because he was faced with not having any kind of spring with his team except for 3 days of mandatory camp. And I give him credit. He got together with the veterans, and I'm sure some of it was the front office too, but they figured out a way to make it work. And they had pretty good attendance for the 2 weeks that they did have voluntary practices. I thought it was a decent compromise to have those voluntary practices kill the mandatory camp. And I think they benefited from it. Did they get enough done? I mean, that's all kind of relative, but I think it's better than nothing.
Now, to play devil's advocate there a little bit, Dave, there were teams that kind of held the ground, and they had mandatory minicamp around the league, and they had good attendance, and ultimately guys showed up. Do you think as a rookie head coach, and maybe this is more of a Howie, Jeffrey Lurie question, the Eagles should have pushed a little bit harder to keep it in place? And even if certain guys didn't show up, veterans, you know, I'm not pointing fingers, but people that don't need really off-season work, the Fletcher Coxes, the world, Brandon Grahams, players like that, young players do need off-season work. So do you think they should have went a little bit more hard line like some of the other teams in the NFL?
I don't know. I mean, I think if they did that, it's starting off Sirianni's time here a little with a contentious nature. Yeah. I mean, saying we're going to force guys to come. And look, we know the deal. It's voluntary for some. It's not voluntary for all these guys. It's the rookies have to show up. They're going to show up. But I wonder, like the middle level guys, if they would have shown up. And look, I mean, the Fletcher Coxes, Brandon Grahams, they weren't there for every day, but they showed up to these voluntary camps. I mean, Darius Slay was there for a lot of it. So I get what you're saying, and maybe it would have worked out fine. But I don't know if that's the right way for Nick Sirianni to start his time, especially with his personality. He is a player's coach. I mean, we've learned that about him so far, that the guys are going to really like him. So I don't know if he were to just kind of draw a line in the sand, day one, if that would have played really well. So I think they played it right. I do. It's not ideal. It isn't. I mean, I think ideal is to have the full thing, but that looked like it was never going to happen.
We haven't had you on since the Eagles have made a change at the QB3 position, the third string quarterback. Jamie Newman was released after guys like myself said, hey, hell of a sign for an undrafted player. He's bigger, but kind of plays the game like Jalen Hurts, be a nice developmental guy. A good job by the Eagles because a bunch of teams were after him. He was here about 10 minutes and they cut him. And they went out and got Nick Mullins, who was probably the most accomplished quarterback left on the free agent market. I'm going to trust the Eagles. You guys were in there for if Jamie Newman was cut in 10 minutes, then you guys got to watch for 5. So we can't really say we saw the reason why Jamie Newman was cut. None of us really know, but we'll give the organization that much credit. They cut the guy for a reason. Something was wrong here, but they end up going to Mullins. I know it's third string and it's probably not going to affect the overall record of the Eagles, but did you understand and or like or dislike what the Eagles did at their third string quarterback position?
Yeah, well, when they signed Newman, we all kind of went, oh, we know that name. Like, that's someone who we think could be good. But then with the undrafted guys, I tell everyone every year, you follow the money. He was the only undrafted player they didn't give any guaranteed money to. There was no signing bonus. So I don't know. I don't think other teams were after him. I think the Eagles said, hey, we'll bring you in. We'll look at you and we'll see. And obviously he was underwhelming. I think ideally they would have a third string quarterback who was a developmental guy. If they could have found a late round quarterback or an undrafted quarterback this year to fit that to me, that would be what you want. But it also appears like they didn't see that guy out there this year. And I thought there were a few options, like a guy like Costello, KJ Costello is someone with tools I thought you could bring along. But they clearly didn't feel that way. So Mullins, look, he has some skills. It's not like he's a nothing. He has some skills. He's not very good, and he's 26, so it's not like he's super young, but he's not super old either. I think the high point or the peak maybe for a guy like Mullins is next year Flacco's gone and Mullins is your backup. I mean, I think that's probably the ceiling for Nick Mullins, but that's okay. I mean, if you have a guy like Mullins who you bring along in your system, he learns it well, you feel like, okay, he's a veteran who could maybe get us through a couple games. Maybe he can be that backup next year for Jalen Hurts or whoever the quarterback is. Mullins is your number 2. I'm okay with it. I still think they would have been better off maybe using a late round pick on a quarterback or finding a good undrafted player, but I get why they went to Nick Mullins.
Now, Dave, I've thrown this at Jody. He disagrees with me, so I'm going to throw it at you. And people talk about developmental quarterbacks. I argue the Eagles have a developmental quarterback. He's just the starting quarterback. So they had that guy in the building who they had to develop. So maybe it's a little bit turning things on their head to have the 2 veterans as the backup, because you do have a guy who's a work in progress as the starting quarterback.
Yeah, but you can develop more than one at a time. And Jalen Hurts, like, I get that he's developing, but he's your starter. So he gets different attention than the third stringer would get. You know, he's going to get attention from the top guys in the organization, whereas if you had, you know, Jamie Newman or KJ Costello or someone like that, they're going to get different type of attention. They're going to get the scrap heap reps. Yeah. You know, they're not going to get it's a different deal. I get what you're saying, but it's a lot different to develop a guy who's in your starter role than it is a third stringer. So I think they could have done it. But like ultimately, it's the third string quarter. Yeah.
It's to me developmental, and you can define it any way you want in your own mind. Developmental means no expectations, that you are being given a less scrutiny because you are still in the developmental process. When you're the first string quarterback, well, there's kind of expectations. You got to go out and play and win. So yes, I believe the developmental tag comes off, but John and I just see that differently. The Eagles and Zach Ertz still here, although I don't think you're guilty. Some reporters here in town had him gone 3 months ago, 2 months ago, a month ago, a week ago, and he's still here. We understand now there's no reason for the Eagles to do anything until camp opens up. So we're now sitting around for another month when we're not expecting to see Zach Ertz happen. But when they do get to camp, most people believe they'd prefer not to have Zach there and or make Zach not show up and have to deal with it as well. When is this all going to shake out, Dave?
I don't know. I kind of thought he'd be gone by now, honestly. There were a few, like, not deadlines, but there were a few moments on the calendar where you thought, this is the time. So the first one was the draft, and you thought, he'll get moved during the draft. That makes a lot of sense. Didn't happen. Then you thought maybe after the draft, maybe a team doesn't draft a guy and they'll nope, didn't happen then. June 1st comes around. All of a sudden, the Eagles have incentive. Deadlines sometimes like they spring action. Didn't happen then. So, yeah, the next date is training camp if the Eagles want to try to unload him before training camp. But, I mean, Howie's made it pretty clear. He's all but come out and said, like, hey, this guy is available, but I'm not going to give him away. And it's a tough thing to figure out how much is he worth, especially because he has a really expensive contract. Like, if he was on the open market right now, there's no way he makes the money he's going to make on his deal right now. So if I'm another team and I'm watching this thinking the Eagles don't want him, why am I going to trade an asset to get him if I think there's a chance they're going to release him? So right. I think that's kind of the cat and mouse game right now between teams. And maybe teams will call the Eagles bluff and they'll say, well, then bring him to camp. Bring him to camp and have that circus. And if you're going to keep him, keep him. I don't think that's going to happen. I think there's kind of too much toothpaste out of the tube already. I don't think you can put it back in. From a football standpoint, they'd be a better team with him, but yeah. I don't know if it makes sense.
Let me ask you a follow-up on that. If they do, they wait, Howie's holding out for the draft. It's just not coming. The league looks at it the way you just described. We are daring you to release him. We believe you're going to release him, so we're not going to give you a pick, Howie. Sorry, it's not happening. if they keep him in the camp, if they do drag this out, if they make him no show by saying, I'm just not showing up at the Eagle camp, and then start to accrue fines, will the organization take a PR hit because one of their best players ever at his specific position, you kind of made it be known that you don't want him. He certainly made it known he doesn't want to be here. Just cut the ties and move on. If they do drag this out after camp opens up, how critiqued will the Eagles be by the Eagle fans and or the other players in the locker room, which might actually be more important?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the players in the locker room would feel a certain type of way about it. I think that players in the locker room kind of understand that it's kind of a unique business situation. Yeah, as far as public perception, I think that they would hope that it would flip a little bit. Like, hey, we're happy to have Zach in camp, and he's not here. I don't know if that would work. Yeah, I don't know what would happen. You kind of hope that it doesn't get too ugly between the player and the team, because look, he is an all-time great. I mean, he caught the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl, for crying out loud. You hope that like eventually in 10 years he can come back to the stadium and they can do a nice ceremony for him, and it's not contentious. But it's tricky. It is. It absolutely is tricky because he's got to be frustrated, right? Because he wants to know where he's going to play next year, and we heard some of the reports of his frustration a while back. Yeah. But I get how he's doing too. He wants to try to maximize value, and he should. That's his job. I think at a certain point they're going to have to make a decision, though. I don't think you can just let this hover over the team for all of training camp. I think if it doesn't happen during training, I mean, it has to happen during training camp, right? You have to know if this guy's playing here or not, and I don't think he will be.
Well, and that's my question, Dave, about Zach is it fair? We just talked about Nick Sirianni, his first hurdle, the offseason work, working out things with the veterans. Is it fair for a rookie head coach to bring them to camp and you have that circus, as you described, even though Zach, we all know Zach's going to be professional, but everything is going to be centered around Zach Ertz. His teammates are going to be asked the question. The coaches are going to be asked the question. It is going to be a circus, at least for a couple of days. Why do you want to do that to a rookie head coach for a player you've decided, good or bad, you probably don't want anymore?
Yeah, I wonder. I don't know how. It's not like he's the starting quarterback. It's not like it's Green Bay right now. That's a circus.
No, that's a circus.
I mean, that's the big top.
It'll be a couple of days. When
it'll be a couple of days of if he's not there, asking teammates what they think about it. I mean, I don't know if it's enough to say, well, we can't have that. We got to release him. I just think that the overall, the grand scheme of things, you don't want it. You don't want that situation. You want to resolve it. And they would have resolved it a while ago if they were getting decent value back, and they're not. So that's what it comes down to for Howie. He's going to try to wait this out. And so maybe it'll work. It kind of feels like the Carson situation a little bit, where eventually they were like, all right, we got to take this deal because it's not going to be there anymore. Obviously, they're not going to get a second-round pick that could turn into a first for Zach Ertz, but it kind of feels like that. Like Howie is just waiting and hoping someone else comes in, and it's just not happening.
Dave, let's flip over to the other side of the ball because, we talk about Zach Ertz every day and the number 2 cornerback on this team every single day. But instead of that, I'm going to back it up a little bit and go to the safety position. Off what maybe you heard, rumors and the like, and just conversation about the team in their non-voluntary non-mandatory workouts is is Rodney McLeod going to be ready to go by the first game of the regular season? I'm not even asking about camp because I think he's a veteran enough guy, even though it's a whole new system, a whole new coaching staff. If he can get in enough practice reps, I'm not worried about him playing in preseason games. Is he going to be ready to go by game number 1?
He's confident he will be. I'm a little more skeptical than him, but I understand why he's confident. He's been through it before. So, look, he knows where he should be in his recovery. So it's one of those things where you kind of have to take his word for it, at least for now, that if he says he's going to be ready, He's been through the injury before. He should know the steps. He should know how his body needs to feel. Week one, it's not a – I don't think that's a guarantee. I think early in the season, for sure, he'll be back based on the timeline. And look, if he's not back, I'm actually intrigued to see some of the young safeties. They have Kayvon Wallace, who had a really great college career, and I wish, honestly, we would have seen more of in his rookie season. And Marcus Epps, I know that fans are kind of down on him.
I want to get an Epsy out there. I like Epsy.
He has some skills, and he has some familiarity with the Vikings, or part of at least what we think they're going to run here. So I wouldn't sleep on him either getting some play. So I actually kind of want to see what these young safeties have. And look, they can do that in the preseason, but if they need to play, and one of those guys is going to play in the season anyway. I mean, at times they're going to have to go to 3 safety looks. So I'm intrigued by Kayvon Wallace especially, and I think Rodney will be, if he's not ready for week one, it'll be soon thereafter. But while we're on the safety position, I'm curious to see how McLeod and Anthony Harris play together. Because they kind of play the same position.
Yeah, they do.
And we haven't talked about it a lot, but they're both kind of deep safeties. And I'm guessing Rodney will be the guy in the box. I don't know what they're going to do. But that's something that they talk about, how interchangeable these safeties are, and that's true. But they do have to play. They have to play different positions, kind of at times. So I don't exactly know who's going to be who in that defense yet.
Yeah, and I kind of get the feeling we're going to see a lot of cover 2 and cover 3, and they're both going to be back a lot. And that's why I think Marcus Epps might have a leg up as well on Kayvon Wallace. But to kind of piggyback off that, pre-vacation, Dave Zangaro, I want to get you on record. I want a breakout player on both sides of the football, but I'm going to put one caveat. No Devontae Smith, because I think we all expect him to hit the ground running and be a difference maker. So somebody who's been here, or maybe a lesser known rookie, Jacoby Stevens, maybe somebody on both sides of the ball that you think is going to step forward and improve a lot, whether it's year 2, year 3, whatever.
Okay. Can I include, I feel like this is almost a cop-out if I say Dallas Goedert. Is that a cop-out?
A little bit of a cop-out, because he's a really good player. That's a top 10 tight end. But I hear what you're saying. You can use Dallas Goedert, because I think he's going to have a big year. I think he's going to be a Pro Bowl level tight end.
Yeah, I do too. I think he's going to catch 70 balls. And I think that the offensive line being a lot better is really going to help him, because he's not going to need to be in as much blocking. He's such – it's almost like it to his detriment how good of a blocker he is in line, because he doesn't – like last year he was in line so much because they needed him to block that, like, you didn't see what he could do as a receiver. But this year, if the line's better, they're going to let him actually go out and catch passes. I think he's going to have a huge year. So it's a little bit of a cop-out, but I'll take Dallas Goedert on offense. And I'll give you a better one on defense. I'll say Milton Williams.
Oh,
I just think that if he gets in there and he gets some reps next to Fletcher Cox, Milton Williams is going to be able to beat a 101. Just with raw explosion, athleticism. I'm not saying he's the finished product. I'm not saying he might not be a liability in the run game at times as a rookie, but I think he can sneak out there and get 4 or 5 sacks this year. So I think he could end up having a really nice rookie season.
I like the Milton Williams one. Yeah, I like it.
I do like it too. I would have been intrigued if you had gone here. So let me just ask you about the player straight up. I certainly would have accepted Travis Fulgham as a potential breakout guy. He is, for me, the toughest guy to handicap coming into the season, because he had that unbelievable stretch where he was not only good, he was one of the best receivers in the National Football League for basically a month. And then it was almost like a magic act. He disappeared. Well, you got to bring him back out of the hat again this year and analyze what he's going to be able to give the Eagles. If you believe that Devontae is going to be that good and that they're going to work very hard to get Jalen Reagor up to speed of the first round, being meritorious of that first round draft pick last year. And Greg Ward is Greg Ward. He's very good at what he does. It's not explosive. It's not going to wow anybody or make highlight films. All he does is catch the football. How does Travis Fulgham fit in? Is he going to be a disappearing guy, or is he going to reemerge as one of the best receivers? That's a wide berth between not involved in one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Where does Fulgham fall in?
Yeah, I think you hit it right straight down the fairway there. I don't think he's the best receiver in the league, and I don't think he's nothing. Like, I don't think that's a fluke that you have 5 games in a row like that. So, and I think he'll have some opportunity too, because I really like the idea of moving Rager inside a lot. Like, I think that getting more nothing wrong with Greg Ward. I like Greg Ward. He's steady, move the chain, sure-handed guy, but Rager gives you more explosion from the inside. So I like the idea of them sliding him in, and then that'll give Fulgham or someone some reps outside, and I think Fulgham will probably get the first crack at those. What is he? I don't know what he is. I think he can make some plays, but remember also last year, a lot of those were timing throws. They were him going up and catching the ball, and it was the other quarterback. It was Carson Wentz. I mean, he didn't do this with Jalen Hurts. So those two need to get on the same page. They need to. A lot of what he does is the quarterback needing to trust him. So they have to build a rapport before Fulgham would do that again. So I think there are real questions. And last year he also got hurt. I mean, he had surgery after the season. So I don't know how much that affected him. You're right. I mean, it's the biggest mystery with this team, and I don't know the answer to it. My guess is it's somewhere down the middle. He's not that guy, and he's not nothing. He's somewhere in the middle, and I think he'll be a decent receiver for the Eagles. I don't know if he's necessarily like their answer.
Dave, we talk to a lot of national guys on this show as well, and I can tell you there are not a lot of expectations for this team nationally. And I think it comes down to the coach, rookie head coach, unproven, and a quarterback, a first-time starter, unproven. If this team were to overachieve, I think it's got to be the offensive line. I think it's got to be that group. And you wrote at NBC Sports Philly about Jeff Stoutland recently. Everybody should go check that out. But if that group is together for 16 games, which is a big if, how much better does that make the Philadelphia Eagles?
A ton. I mean, honestly, that's where all their problems started last year to me. Because you can argue their biggest problem last year was the quarterback, right? He was awful. He was horrendous. But he's not that bad if he has time. He just isn't. He doesn't get in his head. It doesn't spiral. He might be here right now if the offensive line was intact last year, or at least held up a little bit better. It's the best unit on the team. If you had to rank their position groups in terms of talent, the offensive line's at the top of the list, but there are so many question marks around it. With Kelsey's age and Lane and Brandon Brooks coming back from injury, the question of left tackle, who wins the job. Landon Dickerson is their top backup, but what's his health situation? But if that line is together, Jalen Hurts is going to look a lot better. I think that's, you're right. It's the key to this entire season, that offensive line. If they're decent, I think they can, slightly, I don't think they're going to be like a contending team this year, but you're talking about in a weak division, sticking in it for a little while. And that's, I think, what you can hope for this year if you're an Eagles fan.
Dave, John and I go back to this every once in a while, to Nick Sirianni's first press conference. It might have been Dave Zangaro who asked the question, do you control the 53-man roster? And the coach's response was, I think so. I don't really know, which tells you the answer to the question. The answer is no, that Howie Roseman is going to have a massive input, if not complete control, of that 53-man roster. So working under that assumption, outside linebacker for this team this year, you got a bunch of guys who are going to compete and going to have a chance if they all play equally, like no one steps up and shines, no one stinks, that they're all basically contributing, breaking down the film about the same level. Davion Taylor, Jacoby Stevens, Jannard Avery, a guy who was traded for, a guy who was a mid-round pick the year before, an earlier pick the year before, a late pick this year with Jacoby Stevens. What is Howie going to look to protect most? Which is the one that is going to make Howie look the worst if the Eagles decide, all right, we're moving away from this guy? How do you think that competition at that position is going to play out?
Well, so if there's like one spot left on the roster and it's between Jacoby Stevens and Jannard Avery, I think that's a unique circumstance because they're very different. They're both technically linebackers, I guess, but one's kind of a pass rusher, one's more of a safety linebacker hybrid. So they might be able to get by on that by like which player type do we need more? But I think Avery's kind of had his chances here. Like I think if you're looking at if all things were equal, Avery's had chances here. I don't think you'd want to cut a promising rookie, even though you probably could get Stevens to the practice squad. Every year people think that these guys are just going to get claimed, and then it doesn't happen like that.
Never.
Yeah, I mean, you can sneak 6th and 7th round draft picks to every once in a while someone will get claimed, but for the most part, you can sneak these guys to the practice squad. But if Gannon doesn't, and Gannon's going to have a say here too. We talk a lot about Sirianni, but it seems pretty clear to me that they're going to give Gannon maybe not Jim Schwartz autonomy on defense, but they trust him, and he has a scouting background too. So they're going to listen to Jonathan Gannon when it comes to defensive players. So if he thinks that he doesn't have a use for Jannard Avery, I don't think they'd hesitate to cut him.
Last one from me, Dave, and kind of piggybacking off that, because Nick, one of his foundational aspects has been competition, and he talks about it all the time. And whether it's the goopy stuff, rock, paper, scissors, tether ball, 3-point shooting, or on-field stuff, the more important stuff, we all know Fletcher Cox isn't competing, Brandon Graham, Jason Kelsey, they aren't competing for their jobs. But, one job that is legitimately up for competition is Andre Dillard, Jordan Mailata. How much does we bring Howie Roseman back into this? First round pick. It's kind of a Soapy's choice as well for him because, hey, he looks great for the 7th round project who never played football. How much does that play into it? The other stuff, the pedigree versus the prospect, so to speak.
Yeah, it's a fair question because you're right. I mean, either way, I think he looks good. I think he probably looks a little better if it's Dillard because the flip side of Mailata getting the job is Dillard didn't, and now your first round pick's a backup. But Howie might prefer that. Maybe if your other guys come along, you can trade Dillard, which Howie would always be open to, I think. So I really do think the one thing that might play into it more, which would be unfair, but the fact that Mailata can play both sides, that it's almost like Dallas Goedert's blocking is a detriment to him. It's almost like Jordan Mailata's versatility. You worry could be a detriment to him because if they think, well, Dillard, if he's the backup, he's just the backup at one position, whereas Mailata, if he's the backup, he could be the backup swing tackle at either side if they feel like he's a lot better than Jack Driscoll, who would probably be the backup at right tackle. So that could play a role. But ultimately, they have Jeff, and it's funny, I asked Jeff Stoutland who makes the decision, and he said Nick Sirianni. Yeah, I mean, Jeff Stoutland's making this decision. They're going to listen to whatever he has to say. So I think I have faith in Stoutland that he's not going to worry about that stuff as much, that he's going to just pick the best player for the job. So if that's the case, and that should be the case, I mean, Nick Sirianni is going to make the decision, but he's going to listen to whatever Jeff Stoutland says. So if Jeff Stoutland's really the guy picking, I think he's just going to pick the best guy. And that's kind of exciting. I don't know if anything's ever just a true competition, go out there and win it, but this is, I think, maybe as close as you're going to get to that.
Dave, let's go full circle. I asked you about this earlier, and now I want to take it in a slightly different direction. Part of what all three of us have to do is analyze past performance and predict future performance. So I'm asking you to analyze the performance of the Philadelphia Eagle organization. If Zach Ertz never catches another ball for the Philadelphia Eagles, there is a separation. He goes elsewhere. He doesn't come back for a last second and retire as an Eagle type guy and get a game in. He never catches another ball as an Eagle. Did the Eagles retire his number?
Oh, that's tough. Yeah, he's close to it. He's like close to that line.
Yeah. It's interesting. If he would have passed Harold, I'd probably say yes. Yeah. Now you can kind of get out of it. If he's the all-time receiving leader, that might be different.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't retired Shady's number, but they've retired Shady's number. Yeah. You can't retire. I mean, you just can't retire all these numbers.
Right.
They're out of numbers. So they do like these quasi-retirements, and they just don't give them out. I mean, they do that. I was actually surprised they gave away Malcolm Jenkins 27 this quick.
Yeah, that was very.
They gave it away to Zach McPherson this year. I thought that he kind of deserved if they do this for all these guys, I thought he deserved a little more of a buffer. It's a tough one. I'm on the fence about Zach Ertz.
Okay.
You can make the case both ways. I mean, he all-time great. He's going to fall short of Hall of Fame unless he has some kind of resurgence in the end part of his career. But if he ends up in the Hall of Fame, which isn't out of the question, by the way, I mean, he could put together a couple more good years and be there. So,
right. But Donovan McNabb is not making the Hall of Fame, and they did retire his number.
But that's the quarterback. Yeah, I mean, that's your quarterback for a decade. Took you to all those championship games, to a Super Bowl.
I just, as we're having this discussion, Dave, I just changed my mind. I'm saying yes because of the Super Bowl as well. 4th and 1, even bigger than the touchdown. 4th and 1 and the touchdown. I'm going yes, Jody.
Yeah, you can make that case. It's funny. A few years ago, I did this story where I asked a bunch of players what's their best souvenir from the week in Minneapolis, and he won. He's like, I have the football, like the game-winning Super Bowl touchdown football. I was like, all right,
that's kind of a
you win.
That's a drop the mic one.
Some guys are like,
conversation over. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I have my name plate. I have some cleats. He's like, I have the game-winning touchdown Super Bowl or football. I was like, all right, you win.
Yeah.
You win. Dave, we won today because you were good enough to come on with us. We appreciate that greatly. Enjoy your downtime up in Maine. Don't get bitten by too many bugs.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dave.
David Zangaro from NBC Sports Philly.
Yeah, I just changed my mind, Jody. Yes. Retire the number.
Then we'll follow up with further conversation on this because I absolutely, positively, no questions asked, say no.
Really?
For a very specific reason. I'll explain when we come back here on Birds 365.
I get scared sometimes.
Of a lot of things.
Joining in.
Decisions.
The dark.
The dark.
But I once heard someone say,
but as I always say,
it's okay to be afraid.
As long as you face the fear.
And keep moving forward.
Wherever you are in life, count on the name trusted in insurance for over 80 years. Independence Blue Cross.
The savoring taste of a good bag of beef jerky is so enjoyable at any time of the day, as long as you can find it. Here's what we suggest. Pure Bull Beef Jerky is our answer, and soon it will be yours. Locally produced in the Philadelphia region, this high-quality, healthy protein snack is easy to secure. Go to steersnacks.com, and you'll see hot garlic, tropical heat, Pure Bull dry rub, and our favorite, Huck and Fod. What's that? Huck and Fod. Go now to steersnacks.com.
Welcome to the Wildwoods, the perfect place where you can safely do everything or nothing at all. Catch a wave, take a nap, go for a drive, grab a bite. It's your vacation, and we're doing everything we can to make it a safe one. The Wildwoods. Your vacation, your way.
The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 98, is a proud sponsor of The Labor Show with J. Doc and Krause every Saturday night from 6 till 8 p.m. IBEW Local 98's highly trained and superbly skilled electricians are the best in the business, setting the highest safety standards in the electrical industry. So when you're planning your next industrial, commercial, or residential project, choose an IBEW Local 98 union contractor. Learn more at ibew98.org.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
This is a key. It's a family tree. It's a pair of wings. It's a secret handshake. And a ticket to anywhere in the world. It's more than a uniform. It's the door to a world most people only dream of. There's Strong, and then there's Army Strong. Try it on at GoArmy.com.
You got your Mac guys, John McMullen, Jordan Stone here on Birds 365. Hour down, hour left to rock and roll. Hoping to have our buddy Matt Verderame from Fansided.com, NFL national columnist, join us in about 20 minutes or so. Thank Dave Zangaro from NBC Sports Philadelphia for hopping on, and specifically his final answer, because it lended right nicely into what I wanted to bring up with John for this segment. I was going to do it via the fact that Eli Manning is going to have his number retired by the Giants this upcoming offseason. And it got me into a conversation about retired numbers around the league, but specifically here in Philadelphia. There have been 9 previous Eagles who have had their number retired. I could be really unfair and ask you to name the 9. Do you think you got them right off the top of your head, Johnny Mac?
No, but I can give you a bunch right off the top.
Go ahead, bud.
Donovan.
Correct.
Reggie White.
Correct.
Jerome Brown.
Correct.
B-Dog.
Correct.
Van Buren.
Correct.
Bednarik. Can't
Correct.
forget him.
You got three olders left.
Yeah, old guys I got to think about. Brookie.
Brookie is correct. Number 40.
Retzlaff.
Pete Retzlaff, which means there is only one left. John McMullen is about to sweep the category.
No, I don't think I am. I'm out.
I'll give you initials. A.W.
Oh, Al Wistert.
Al Wistert is the 9th and final Philadelphia Eagle. John, I got to tell you, I'm impressed. You rattled them off pretty damn good. But those are the 9 Philadelphia Eagles who had their numbers retired. So let me do a little number crunching, because I know you're not a numbers guy. Neither one of us are, but maybe me a little bit more so than you. They now have 90-man rosters in the National Football League, right?
Yeah. Well, off season, yeah.
Right, off season. The Eagles have 9 retired numbers. Even if you bring, I guess if you bring 0 and double 0 in, then you actually have a 101. But at some point, if you have that many more retired numbers, you don't even have a number for every single player. And
no, you don't. But yeah, I have my roster, my trusty roster right here.
Very nice.
And in the offseason, they do this a lot. There's offense and defense. So there's 2 32s, for instance. Jason Huntley on offense, Nate Metters on defense. There's 2 46s, Adrian Killens, Josiah Scott, 2 47s, LeBert Hill, Trevon Grimes. Trevon got cut, so he's gone. There's 2 61s, there's 2 64s, 2 66s.
That is just flat out wrong. Yeah. If you have to share your number with a teammate, that's wrong in my estimation.
74, there's a lot of them. 76. So that's how they get around that. Dave brought up a good point about 27 and Malcolm Jenkins, because they've done that unofficial retiring. Nick Foles, they haven't given out. That hasn't been that long. Randall Cunningham, they haven't given out for a very long time. Number 12, Shady as well, and Brent Selleck. So I will say this, Brent, very good player here for a long time, but that's not comparable. So they better at least unofficially retire Zach Ertz's number. I'll say that.
Right, but if you got Selleck and remember, the one thing that plays to the Eagles' favor and every other team's favor is the fact that they've relaxed the use of certain numbers at certain positions. It used to be that you were hard and fast. If you play this position, you must wear a number between X and Y. They've actually relaxed that a little bit, which does give you some more flexibility. But I just think it's bad that you have to have two players in camp with the same number. Now, I know it's going to be two players that are have a percentage chance to make the team, and it might not be a very high percentage chance, and one of them is probably going to be gone. But if you're one of those guys in camp and you're sharing your number with another guy, Nick Sirianni could talk about competition. It all comes down to competition. We're competing in absolutely everything. You're already behind the 8 ball. You've got a number that another guy has. You're number 68, and who you standing next to on the sidelines? Number 68. That's wrong. You at least have your own number.
And by the way, Jody, this is why coaches, one of the biggest cliches in the coaching world is control what you can control. Because forget about numbers. You're right. I mean, if you're sharing a number, you're not Fletcher Cox. That. And you're talking about competition. So if you start feeling sorry for yourself, things can go really negatively for you. But guess what? If you see the depth chart and you're 5th to 6th on the depth chart, the same thing. And, all you're trying, and that's why coaches say that. Control what you can control. Get better. If you prove something, you're going to be here. And even if you don't, even if we don't have room for you, somebody else is going to pick you up in this league. So, it's one of those things. It's really hard mentally on players, and they got to find their own way how to get through it. But you can get very depressed very early if you're looking so far deep on the depth chart. You start doing the math, you're not going to make the team. How do guys handle that? It's all different. You got to be mentally tough. We've been talking about mental toughness with Ben Simmons. You got to be mentally tough to get through stuff like that.
All right. So, I love my hypothetical questions, and this is as hypothetical as it gets. So let me run it by you. Which would you feel more challenged as? If you were a player on a team and you not only shared a number with one player, but you shared a number with 2 other players. That 3 guys had the same number.
Well, in theory, they could do that because they could have 61 offense, 61 defense, 61 special teams.
Right.
They want to have a kicker.
Exactly. So if you're sharing the number, or you're a member of the Philadelphia Eagles this year, and they give you Fletcher Cox's number as well. Which do you actually feel that much less confident about? Being one of 3, or the guy who's got the same number as Fletcher Cox?
Well, that's never going to happen. But I will say this. Remember, you go down to 53. So the important part of this is everybody gets their own number when you get down to 53. Nobody's doubling up. So as long as, what are the Eagles at? 9, Jody? 9 retired numbers?
9 retired numbers, correct.
The only number that matters is the 53. So they got plenty of room. They got plenty of room to retire Zach Ertz.
All right. The preseason numbers don't count, but I guess if Johnny Mac, you're there every single day, and you've got, as you said, your trusty roster, so you can stay on top of it. But you can be careful with that. You could fake out some Eagle fans pretty easily if you've got a bunch of 53s, 54s, 55s running around.
Well, some Houston, a lot of the Houston reporters were upset because they didn't have numbers. They just had guys out there, and they didn't know who anybody was. Poor John McMullen, who's been covering the Texans forever, didn't know who anybody was. They didn't have numbers on the players. It was unbelievable. Patriots have done that as well, I think.
Speaking of John McMullen, he's been on my show a bunch of times over the years. We got to remind me that we got to try and get him on Birds 365. I think Johnny Mac will come on for me because he's been good to me and hopping on my national radio show. But besides that, what was I going to bring? Oh, yesterday's show. We got Matt Verderame from Fansided, a very good national reporter who's scheduled to join us coming up in about 10 minutes from now. We had Connor Orr on yesterday for Sports Illustrated. And he made a great point that I hadn't thought of, and I know you hadn't thought of either because you go, damn, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that, about the fact that the NCAA is going to be forced via legislation coming out of the Supreme Court to pay players going forward. Not only are they going to be able to make money in their own likeness with autographs and any money they can garner from social media, but the NCAA, at least as the opinion of the Supreme Court, should be told that you can go ahead and pay the players because we don't want to restrain the trade of players being able to make money any way they want. Your whole idea of amateurism should go by the wayside, which when we asked how it's going to shake out of Connor Orr, he said, oh, yeah, it's just going to mean the rich get richer. The bigger universities with the bigger backers, with the alumni that funnel money into the program, will have that much more to give to the top high school talent around the country. So the best players are going to go even more so. As they expand the playoff picture in college football, it's probably going to be more likely that it's going to be Alabama and Clemson and Notre Dame and the usual suspects that we see in there all the time because players are going to start to get paid, which he took another step and said, and then the influence it will have on the National Football League is guys will be in specific systems. And they'll be coming out of these universities year in and year out. Will that not force, but push NFL teams to say, yeah, their system is working for them. They've got all these good players. If we already have the system in place and we're going to be picking those players, wouldn't it be easier just to take them out of a system that they've already excelled in and put them into our system and know they're going to fit like a glove because they did the same thing on the collegiate level? You said it. I felt it. I hadn't even thought it through that far. Yeah. And that was a great point by Connor Orr. Is that good or bad, John? If Connor Orr's got a great crystal ball of the future of football and he's dead on right, is that good or bad for the pro football, college football?
Well, it's certainly bad for college. I will say that. It's terrible for college. I mean, people don't understand. I get it. And luckily there's going to be some time. I think people have not understood this ruling. It's very limited. I mean, players are ultimately going to get paid at the college level, but it's going to take a while, number one. Number two, there's some other issues they have to deal with as well, most notably Title IX. So you have to share revenue at the college level amongst lesser revenue generating sports. So there's a lot of hurdles you got to go through. But ultimately, Jody, as far as systems, I've often said the NFL, maybe I can't think of another industry where innovation trickles up. I always say, it trickles up really. And people say college, really it starts at high school, then it goes to college, and then it trickles up to the NFL finally. The second part is they keep limiting work at the professional level. So coaches don't have time.
Right.
So, yeah, I think they would default to, okay, this is what Jalen Hurts did well in college. Let's run this. Let's try to get Lincoln Riley, which the Eagles did, by the way. Let's try to get a college coach. Let's try to do it. I just think it makes it easier. It's going to make the game. And this is where I think Bill Belichick's brilliant. I think, because I think everybody sort of gets in their little group think echo chamber. And, you have these grand ships. And now we talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the show in baseball and analytics. You have that in football as well. I don't think it's about one way or the other. I think it's about finding something nobody else does and being ahead of the curve. And what Belichick, in other words, when everybody's zigging, you got to zag. Because if what I'm trying to say, Jody, if 32 teams are doing the exact same thing, doesn't matter what that thing is. It means the best one of the 32 wins.
Right.
If you find something truly innovative, if you do something truly different, then you have the advantage. Then everybody copies and you got to keep ahead of the curve. So if everybody's doing the same thing, this is RPOs, spread offense, then it's just who does it the best. You're back to execution. You're back to where you were, just with a different formula. And that's where I think Belichick is brilliant. So the coaches that zag are always going to be the best coaches.
And the reason that Belichick is as great as he is, to me, Belichick has not been a head of the curve guy. He's just been a better at everything guy. He does everything a little bit better than all 31 of the other coaches in the National Football League. There's nothing really that Bill Belichick did during his entire tenure in New England. I go, wow, how innovative was that? Nothing.
Oh, I disagree with that, Jody. Man.
What was he innovative with? Tell me.
Well, number one, I think he trusts his players more than anything else. We constantly talk about it, especially defensively. And why does he trust his players? Because he teaches his players better than anybody else. But we talk about, do you run a 4-3? Do you run a 3-4? The Patriots run what they want. They might run one thing one week and something completely different the next week. I still have yet to see an NFL team do that. I look at Sean McVay. Sean McVay is the flavor of the month in the NFL. He's been the flavor of the month for years now. That Super Bowl, man, he just got an 11 personnel. He ran the same thing. The whole never adjusted. And Belichick he admitted he was shell-shocked after the game. He was shell-shocked because they wouldn't fall for the eyewash because he had his players disciplined. He taught them well. But no other coach shifts his philosophy from week to week, never mind year to year. He does it from week to week. He's zagging when everybody else zigs.
Okay,
helps to have the best quarterback.
His innovation is that he's flexible.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Depending on how you slice and dice it, you're right. That he should get credit for that. And when we call him the GOAT, that does kind of mean we're giving him credit. All right. Speaking of giving credit, we want to give some to our buddy Matt Verderame from Fansided. He's going to join us next here on Birds 365.
I get scared sometimes.
Of a lot of things.
Joining in.
Decisions.
The dark.
The dark.
But I once heard someone say,
but as I always say,
it's okay to be afraid.
As long as you face the fear.
And keep moving forward.
Wherever you are in life, count on the name trusted in insurance for over 80 years. Independence Blue Cross.
The savoring taste of a good bag of beef jerky is so enjoyable at any time of the day, as long as you can find it. Here's what we suggest. Pure Bull Beef Jerky is our answer, and soon it will be yours. Locally produced in the Philadelphia region, this high-quality, healthy protein snack is easy to secure. Go to steersnacks.com, and you'll see hot garlic, tropical heat, Pure Bull dry rub, and our favorite, Huck and Fod. What's that? Huck and Fod. Go now to steersnacks.com.
Welcome to the Wildwoods, the perfect place where you can safely do everything or nothing at all. Catch a wave, take a nap, go for a drive, grab a bite. It's your vacation, and we're doing everything we can to make it a safe one. The Wildwoods. Your vacation, your way.
The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 98, is a proud sponsor of The Labor Show with J. Doc and Krause every Saturday night from 6 till 8 p.m. IBEW Local 98's highly trained and superbly skilled electricians are the best in the business, setting the highest safety standards in the electrical industry. So when you're planning your next industrial, commercial, or residential project, choose an IBEW Local 98 union contractor. Learn more at ibew98.org.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
This is a key. It's a family tree. It's a pair of wings. It's a secret handshake. And a ticket to anywhere in the world. It's more than a uniform. It's the door to a world most people only dream of. There's Strong, and then there's Army Strong. Try it on at GoArmy.com.
We appreciate all you guys hopping onto the stream of Birds 365 on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. John McMullen, Jody McDonald here with you. We're adding a third voice for the next 20 minutes or so, and he's an educated one at that. When it comes to pigskin, does a great job for fansided.com. It's podcast, which I just checked out for the first time. Shame on me, because I've had Matt on as a guest for about the last year or so. Stacking the Box is phenomenal as well. Matt Verderame from Fansided joins us here on Birds 365. How are you, Matty?
Doing good, guys. How are you?
Doing good, Matt. Good to see you again. Thanks for joining the program. Want to start you off with a little curveball. We'll get into the more the bigger stories, but I did find something interesting with Justin Fields coming out of Chicago. The plan that he's not going to compete for the starting job week one. When you have a high-profile quarterback, first-round pick that high, it's not top 5, but it's close. How much pressure? You can say it in June, but how much pressure is it to get those kinds of guys on the field early?
A lot. And I'm based in Chicago. A whole lot. Okay. They play the Rams week 1 on Sunday Night Football. If Andy Dalton starts that game and plays terribly, there is going to be a chorus of people on Monday morning saying, get him out, get Justin Fields in. Why are we waiting? This is ridiculous. Fire Ryan Pace. Fire Matt Nagy. This is a city that is starved for a quarterback. When is the last time the Bears had a great quarterback? Sid Luckman?
Sid Luckman, yeah.
Sid Luckman, right? So if you're a Bears fan, especially if Fields plays in the preseason and plays really well, and that's why I do not understand why coaches and teams put themselves in these corners. Just go into camp and say, look, the best guy is going to play. That's it. Just like at any other position. You wouldn't say that about any other position. And conversely, it's like with Jacksonville when you got Brian Schottenheimer saying, well, we don't know Trevor Lawrence is going to be the starter. Yes, you do. You're not lying to anybody here and getting anyone to believe you. So I don't know why Matt Nagy did that. I like Matt Nagy. I think he's a better coach than people believe. But I thought he boxed himself in a corner a little bit. And, yeah, there's not going to be a lot of patience with that if the Bears lose week 1.
I didn't even know John was going to go there. But since he did, no problem. Let me follow up with this. What's going to happen to Nick Foles? If there is a question about who's going to be the starter, is it going to be Andy Dalton or Justin Fields? And, yes, it could run from before they ever play a preseason game through game 1, and it could go on all year. Then you got Nick Foles, who is near and dear to a lot of Philadelphians' hearts because of what he did in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. He is entrenched as the number 3 quarterback. Do you really need a number 3 quarterback? I'm questioning the Eagles because they got Nick Mullins as their number 3 quarterback. I want a developmental guy. Yeah, John says, well, the developmental guy is the starter. And the same thing could be in Chicago if Justin Fields is the starter. What does Nick Foles' tenure in Chicago look like?
brief. Look, I think if you're the Bears and you can trade him, even just for a conditional pick, something like that, you would do it. At this point, look, if you trade him, I just brought up his numbers. Like you'd need $2.6 million. You'd save $4 million. Now, if you cut him, you're eating 11.6, and you're only saving $5 million. So I think either way, though, they're going to do it. I mean, even if they have to eat the 11, okay, well, you're still at least saving $5 million. I don't see why he would want to be there as a third-string quarterback, and I don't see why they would keep him there on such a deal, right? Like, there's no team that could use him as a backup. I find that hard to believe. So, I don't think he's going to be in Chicago come Labor Day. I just don't see any real reason. And for him, look, Nick Foles is kind of like, he feels like a cat with 9 lives. Like he bounces around, he ends up in places, right? And it looked like his career was over with the Rams, and then he ends up with the Chiefs for a year, and all is lost, and then he goes back to the Eagles, wins Super Bowl. So I think he'll end up as a backup somewhere else, whether it's getting cut and signed, or it's getting traded for a flyer of a pick.
Matt, Carl Nassib is obviously the biggest story nationally, far bigger than even the NFL. You got the president of the United States chiming in. Everybody's supporting Carl Nassib, as they should. It was interesting. We had Amy Trask on a couple of weeks ago talking about Catherine Raish being hired by the Eagles as the highest-ranking female in personnel. And what she said to us, and I'll say it again on the show, is that it'll be great when this isn't a story. In other words, when people just move on and say, oh, they hired Catherine Raish, let's see what she does. Same thing with Carl is the fact when we get to the point where the president doesn't have to chime in on somebody in the NFL, how do we get to that point? Can we get to that point?
Yeah, we can. And we get to that point with people like Carl Nassib, who come out and say, look, this is who I am to some degree. As a part of my story, I'm a gay man in the NFL. And I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not going to hide it. I'm not going to closet it. I think, that's where every once in a while you'll see somebody say, well, who cares? Who cares? Well, why does it matter? Well, it matters because you give an identity to someone who maybe is a young athlete who's gay, who all of a sudden says, you know what, if he can do it and he has the courage to come out and say it, then I can have the courage to come out and say it. And the more people that do, then I think that's where you kind of get into the less that it matters from a societal standpoint. And now it's just, oh, that's fine. Who cares? Well, Carl Nassib, he was gay and he played in the NFL. And so why does it really matter that much? It's no big deal. And, listen, I think it's great. He's gotten the support that he's gotten both from the NFL, from around the NFL. That'll help other people to come out. I always kind of chuckle when you'll see the Twitter commenter who says, well, I can't believe that would be the case. And so you don't think there have been gay players before Carl Nassib who just happened? Look, there were famously multiple gay players in the 60s who played under Vince Lombardi in Washington.
Oh, yeah.
Ezra
Tuaolo, I covered one of the first players I covered.
Sure.
Defensive tackle in Minnesota.
This is not a new deal, having gay players in the league, having gay players in any sport. It's just now that we're at a point in society where people feel more comfortable in coming out and doing so. And I think that's great. And I think as time goes on and more players come out and do so while they're active, that's when we get to a point where it's not a big deal. And it's not covered as though it's a landmark event, because it's not anymore. It's just part of that player's story, and that's fine. Can he play? Can he not? That's all that matters.
And a great sidelight story, at least for the last 48 hours. Number 1 selling jersey in the National Football League. Carl Nassib jumps past all the drafted quarterbacks and superstar players and the like. A week ago, 100 football fans line them up. What team is Carl Nassib on? Chances are 90 of them can't tell you. But now people are running out and buying his jersey, which is a great thing. A note I saw in your column, which I thought was great. It's funny how I always believe that. It's great if I hadn't thought of it. 17-game season this year. The NFL has never had a 6,000-yard quarterback. Joe Willie the first to 4,000, then they expanded games, and they went past 5,000. We're only adding 1 game this time.
Right.
And it's It's not like they're going to have to, a quarterback's going to have to average 400 yards. It's 350 and change if he plays all 17 weeks. Give me that percentage chance, Matt Verderame, that we actually do get a 6,000-yard passer this year. And if not, how close is close?
I think it's probably about a 5 to 10% chance. It's just hard. All it takes is having one game where you throw for 200, and now you got to throw for 500 to even out that average. That's where, I'm sure we're going to have a guy who's on pace for it after like 4 or 5 games, like Dak would have been last year. Obviously, unfortunately, he gets derailed by injury, but even if he's healthy, it just becomes so hard. Like, I think you'd have to be on a bad team, because I'm sure if there are odds out there in Vegas, and God knows there probably are in some book, if you look at, who's the most likely guy to do that? It'd probably be like Rodgers and Mahomes, but those teams win all the time. So, those guys are going to throttle it down in the fourth quarter. They're not going to be going guns blazing for 4 quarters. I mean, Mahomes went through for 5,000 yards, did it because they couldn't stop anybody, and they had to keep scoring. So I think, you're more likely to see a guy on a bad team do it, a guy who's just got to throw and throw and throw and throw. But it's so hard. I wrote it in the columns. I was just thinking, obviously we've already seen guys rush for 2,000 yards. I think the next benchmark is going to be 2,500. Now that'll be interesting to see if a guy does that, just considering how the game has moved toward the pass. But, who's the first guy to get to 25 sacks? Who's the first receiver to get to 2,000 yards? Calvin Johnson almost did it. Jerry Rice almost did it. But I think it's like a 5 to 10% chance. Eventually it'll happen. You'll have some quarterback who's just is a great player with some weapons around them and has a terrible defense behind them, right, and just chucks it 50 times a game. It'll happen, but I don't know that it'll happen this year.
Matt, I want to say I'm not as sure as it's going to happen for this reason. I look around sports as a whole, and I think load management is coming to the NFL. And I hear, even though it's just one game different, you start to hear the whispers of, okay, we're gonna rest a guy here, we're gonna rest a guy there, and then you couple in the sort of, I don't know if it's a plan, that's probably a bad word, but the league is certainly trying to get players away from pushed into a corner, really, let's be honest, as they always are. Get players away from Toradol, go in different directions, get away from opioids, go in different directions from pain relievers. And guess what? If you don't have Toradol, you're not going to be able to play through certain things. So how much does the load management scale back those kind of expectations? Maybe missing 2 or 3 games becomes more the norm.
It could. I'll be the first to say, look, first of all, especially in football with non-guaranteed contracts, if you have an injury and you want to sit that game out, you ought to, because from a career standpoint, you're better off. That said, the load management stuff, and I'm a Knicks fan, so I basically was just brought back to the NBA after 20 years of health. I can't stand all that stuff in the NBA.
I'm with you, but I think it's coming.
Oh, it might. But it drives me crazy. The NBA has just turned into where guys play 50 games because they just basically need a vacation halfway through the year, which, by the way, happens in no other sport. Does not happen in hockey. Does not happen in baseball, right? Like in baseball, if there's ever a sport with 162 games to play every day, you'd think that would be the one where guys would want like a day off a week. Nope. Doesn't happen there. But basketball, guys need like 2 weeks off in the middle of the season. Anyway, I digress. Could it happen? It could. It could. I just think the mentality in football is such that you play. You play. It doesn't matter what the weather is. It doesn't matter if you're hurt. You better get out there and play. Now, maybe there's the new age athlete that changes, and I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world. Again, if you're hurt, you probably should sit. But I just think it's so ingrained in the NFL culture. Oh, you've got to fracture the leg. We could tape it. Or the old Lombardi. If it's not sticking out, it's not broken, right? So maybe it's not a crazy thought, but I think in the NFL that mentality carries you a long way, right or wrong. I just think it does.
Matty, we haven't talked about this here on this show for a couple of weeks, and I'll apologize in advance for dragging you there with us. But Now we've got continued hot air coming out of Houston because of the lawsuits against Deshaun Watson. And Rusty Hardin, who's representing it's almost a class lawsuit now. A lot of the individuals are claiming that Deshaun Watson had inappropriate behavior during massages with them, stated this week that he believes that the NFL has not even interviewed Deshaun Watson yet. Is that actually true? Can that be true? Can they be doing an investigation without saying, Deshaun, we need you to sit down and talk to one of our investigators? Is this just lawyer bloviating tactics, or do you think that's actually true?
Is it possible? Yeah. I mean, anything's possible. I'll put it this way. I don't know whether it's true or not, but I don't think it'll be true by the end of the investigation. If it is, then the investigation's not good. Right. Okay, like you have to sit down with Deshaun Watson. You have to. Otherwise, what are you really doing? You have to investigate, and you have to investigate thoroughly. It has to be on both sides of the aisle here. It has to be any alleged victim willing to come forward and talk, and it has to be the accused, in this case, Deshaun Watson, who sits down with Roger Goodell and any other league officials and says, look, this is my side of things. I think we're getting to an interesting point, though. Now we're 5 weeks or so away from training camp. How long does this go on before the league puts him on the commissioner's exempt list, right? Which, for anyone who doesn't know, is essentially you're suspended but with pay. I think it's got to be fairly soon. The NFL is not going to want Deshaun Watson breaking camp with the Texans here. They're not going to want that. Not with all these legalities and all the legal issues hanging over his head, and that becoming obviously what would be a dominant story this summer. I have to think at some point, or the NFL is either going to wrap its investigation and make a determination, which I think is hard to do with all these pending cases, or they're going to say, look, we're putting you on the commissioner's exempt list until all this is figured out. And now I don't know how he'd feel about that. He might say, well, why? I've not been found guilty of anything. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm maintaining my innocence. But, the NFL has shown that it will punish somebody without any legal findings of guilty. Right. So I would have to think he's going to go on the commissioner's exempt list. And it's just a matter of time at this point, unless magically these cases just go away between now and July 27th.
Yeah, and I think Nick Cesario just kind of spoke, I think it was last week, and said he expects some, clarity at least by the beginning of training camp. I think we all thought commissioner's exempt list at that point. He's not going to show up to camp. He's not going to be there. But, from a larger perspective, Matt, I want to ask you about the NFL. Take Deshaun Watson out of it. Should they be in the investigation business, or should they just say, look, let's let this play out. We'll put people on the exempt list. Let's let this play out. Let's let the investigators do this and better educate the public. Because I think that's the problem. I think it's a PR problem from the league standpoint, because you know how fans are. They want they want this guy suspended. They want this guy banned. Well, there's legal implications. You can't just do that. So if you better educate the public, maybe it's better than getting into something you're not very good at or equipped to do, to be honest. There's no subpoena power.
I agree with you. I think the NFL years ago waded into very choppy waters when it decided, we're gonna have our own investigation team. We're gonna look into this stuff. I understand why, but at the same point, like in my eyes, it should be just like anything else when it comes to legal stuff in the United States, which is to say, look, you're innocent until you're proven guilty. And I get it. Like the NFL doesn't want Deshaun Watson in the public eye right now because of everything that's gone on. It would become a dominant storyline. Like I totally understand that from a business standpoint. But you start going down a real slippery slope where, hey, we're going to punish a guy who's been accused of something, even if we don't know if he's guilty of it, even in some cases where things have been dismissed. And look, obviously, that doesn't always mean that person was innocent. That person very well could have been guilty and got off either because of a settlement or intimidation or just whatever. A jury found them innocent. They were wrong. I mean, But that also happens around the country with all walks of life, where people get away with things they shouldn't get away with. I agree. I think, look, my bigger problem with the NFL is it just feels so arbitrary. The punishments range from like where you go, oh, I think this guy's going to get 2 games. He gets 7. I think this guy's going to get half the season. He gets 1. Right? That's where, I think you also get into trouble. And God knows they're not the only league with that issue. The NHL is notorious for that with on-ice stuff where, guys, you think they're going to get suspended for a lifetime and they get a $5,000 fine. But I think there should be, if you're going to do this, and I think now they have to because they've set a precedent, and at this point you almost have to follow through with it. I think they should have more of a stringent, this is the penalty for this, this is a penalty for this, this is a penalty for this. And it should be clear and it should be concise, which I don't think it is right now. All
right, Matty, I want to get your take on the GOAT, the greatest of all time, quarterback Tom Brady. Pretty big deal over the last couple of days. He's on LeBron James's TV show, The Chop, the barbershop. He, Maverick Carter, sitting around high-level athletes in all sports, a lot of different sports, and famous musicians and actors and actresses and like. I think it's a really good show on HBO. I make sure I watch it every time. Well, he's got Brady. LeBron's got Brady on in this next upcoming episode, and they clipped a little promo part out of it for the upcoming show in which Brady talked about being a free agent and the process and where it went to eventually at the end. And he's talking about a team, and they don't tell you what team it is, but he said, in the end, they were out on me. And I said to myself, I can't believe they're going to go with this MFer at quarterback rather than me. And it really is a great promo, but it also makes you think, who dropped the ball? Who is the team that Brady felt so motivated to say, wait a minute, they're going with that MFer rather than me at quarterback? Who do you think, because it's going to leak out at some point, who do you think is the team that's going to get egg on its face?
I've seen some people say it's Tennessee. Maybe it is. I think it's either the Raiders or the Niners. I just feel like now I don't know what his personal relationship was like with Jimmy Garoppolo. Maybe they're cool, and he wouldn't say that about him. Maybe he can't stand them, and he absolutely would say that about him. I don't know, but I think you knew that the Niners and the Raiders were involved in trying to recruit him last year, or at least had interest in him. So I could see Brady saying that about Derek Carr. Like really, like Derek Carr's never won a playoff game. And you're staying with Derek Carr, okay? Garoppolo, obviously, if they don't have the best of terms between the two of them, you can say it about him as well. I've seen some people say it about the Bears, but I feel like with the Bears last year, it was more of a case of they had no money. So I mean, look, maybe that wouldn't stop Brady from feeling that way, but I think they couldn't do it. If the Bears could have gotten Tom Brady, they would have walked across Lake Michigan to do it. So, my guess is either the Raiders or the Niners. I'll say the Raiders. I'll stab at it. But whoever it was, not great because it worked out all right for Tampa last year.
And I'll tell you the team it should have been. And I brought this up. Sorry, John. Denver never really got involved. We had a Denver guy on a couple of weeks ago. How do you not if you're Denver? You've got Drew Lock. You had already gone down that road of bringing in Peyton Manning, late stages. All he does is get you to 2 Super Bowls and win one of them, even though kind of like that Elway guy. He wasn't the main reason why they ended up winning the one that they did. Oh, Brady's still capable of being damn close to the reason that you win. Why was Denver never involved with Brady last year? Because I'm with you. I think you named 3 good teams, and you didn't name Denver, which I think is correct because they got out of it so early. The way Brady said it was like in the end, they decided not to make a play. Yeah. I don't think Denver was ever in that mix. Why weren't they?
I don't know. And I don't understand like Denver. I don't understand Denver's offseason this year, right? Like, okay, you went out and you traded for Teddy Bridgewater, which, okay, it's fine, I guess. I don't think it really matters. You're in a division with Herbert, who looks like he's going to be a damn good quarterback for the next 15 years. And you're in a division with Mahomes. Like, I'm sorry. You're never winning that division with Drew Lock. Ever. I don't and I see so many Broncos fans, even media types around him say, well, what if he gets a lot better? Okay, and becomes what? Ryan Tannehill? Yeah. You're still not ever winning the division. Like, you need a quarterback who can go toe to toe. That's why when all this stuff with Rodgers happened, especially the day of the draft, if I'm the Broncos, I'm giving up anybody. Like, anybody you want. I don't care. Who do you want? You want Jerry Jeudy? That's fine. Right? Like, and I thought it was interesting when they passed on Fields. Now, maybe Fields ends up becoming a bust and it doesn't matter. Mac Jones, whatever. I get that Patrick Surtain is just this, prized corner. He could be Deion Sanders. It doesn't matter. You have Drew Lock, right? And I was shocked they passed on Justin Fields. When Fields was there and the Broncos are sitting on the clock, I thought, well, they have to take him. I mean, unless they know they have Rodgers in their back pocket somehow. But once the draft ends, it becomes a hell of a lot harder to trade for him. Like, I was shocked. But in regards to Brady, look, I just always believe if you can get that quarterback, even if it's for a couple of years, you just do it. You do it. You figure it out afterwards. It wasn't like Brady had some massive injury history or anything like that. And they were not involved. They were not. And Tampa was, and obviously Tampa's pretty happy about the end result.
Well, for the record, guys, if that was a Rorschach test, I went with San Francisco because I said the same thing. They're going to go with that MFer over Tom Brady. I've said the exact same thing. So that's why I picked San Francisco. But I want to talk about the other GOAT, Matt, Bill Belichick in New England, because he created a bit of a kerfuffle with the analytics people again yesterday, talking at the GM forum. Now, is Bill trolling because a lot of people talk themselves into he uses advanced analytics. He's very secretive. Ernie Adams finally spoke for the first time at his retirement. Or as a whole, I think the bigger question I want to ask you, why is this continue? You have this all over the league, analytics people versus football people. Why can't they just get along?
The ultimate athletic version of the Hatfields and the McCoys.
Right.
Like, no head coach wants to hear in his ear, hey, Bill, there's a 79% chance if we run left, we gain 6 yards. And I think it was Andy Reid as well, who also kind of said, I don't do it. I'm old school, even though I'm 32. I think a lot of that stuff is so overblown. Like, look, every game is a game unto itself. Now, that doesn't mean it's not a useful tool. I think it is a useful tool. And I do believe that you're short-sighted and maybe cutting off your nose to spite your face, to use a tired cliche, if you don't at least consider it, because you can look at tendencies and figure out certain things and how coaches play and how maybe quarterbacks like to throw the ball and target a side of the field. But I do think, and we've seen it, of course, in baseball, where analytics have gotten to the point now that, if hey, we're going to stick 9 infielders on one side because he's going to hit a ground ball and it's going to be at an 80-degree angle, whatever. I mean, I believe that you can go overboard, but I do think as time goes on, there will be more of a marriage. And some teams are really into it. Baltimore is an example of a team that they love analytics. I mean, the Ravens use them constantly. And I think, like Andy Reid kind of said as well, I don't really go as much into the analytics, but I'll tell you, I mean, I grew up a Kansas City Chiefs fan. And believe me when I say they go for it on 4th down in spots where you go, really? And every analytics nerd in the world is like, that's great. The Chiefs love analytics. When apparently they don't, and Andy just believes enough in Mahomes to go for it on 4th and 2 from his own 30, right? Like, and I think that's part of it. The statistics are all fine and well. Do you have the personnel to execute what those statistics are telling you? Is the weather a factor? Is maybe there's something where you just play a hunch, where you say, you know what, earlier in the game, the other team ran a play out of a formation that we've never seen them run it out of before, and now they're coming back out in a similar formation, and we think they're going to run that play again. And you just believe your gut. So I get it. Like, I think analytics are useful. I do also think they're overrated at times. And apparently I'm in decent company because Bill Belichick thinks that they're useless. And
well, it's funny, Matt, because Doug Peterson was really successful using analytics and being aggressive when he had a really good team. When he didn't, he was less successful.
Yeah.
It's funny how that works.
Yeah.
If you have more talent, you're more successful, right? Like, I don't know. I get it. Football is hard too because it's, unlike baseball, where there's 162 games and you have these massive sample sizes. In football, you have 17 games. Like, you can have a weird, not just a game, you can have a weird year where for whatever the reason, you know what, you just, you have a Derek Anderson to the Pro Bowl situation where you're like, what? How did that happen? What happened? Mitchell Trubisky had a really good year, went to the Pro Bowl one year. Like, it's just, you look at these things and say, okay, well, why did that happen? Well, because it's football and it's 17 games, and you might have played a last place schedule, and the team might have gotten a lot better around you in the offseason. Like, I just think analytics are a little less useful in the NFL because of that reason. It's just such a small. You play 10 years in the NFL. That's one baseball season.
Yeah.
As a horse racing degenerate fan that I am and wagerer, I'll tell you right now, there are a lot of things you can take into consideration when you're trying to pick a winner in a race: post position, jockeys, rest, workout time. Give me the fastest horse. If one horse has run that much faster than everybody else previously, that's the one I want to be on. If I got Patrick Mahomes, yeah, I'm going to be aggressive and I'm going to take some chances. So good for Andy Reid. Last thing, Matt, I'm going to ask you to look into the football crystal ball for me. It's been 20 plus years, 25, somewhere thereabouts, that we've actually had a repeat of a previous year's Super Bowl. The Bills and the Cowboys played back-to-back years in the bowl 20 plus years ago. And a lot of people are talking about the fact that it could be the Bucs and the Chiefs again by the time we get to February. If I tell you one of the two is guaranteed not to be there, which one you taking?
Tampa. Because of the age of so many of their stars. Right? Brady's 44, Gronk's older and has an injury history. Antonio Brown is older. Pierre Paul's older. Levante Davis on the other side of 30, and Ndamukong Suh. And I think the NFC, while I don't think it's the better conference, if Rodgers goes back to Green Bay, they could certainly get there. The NFC West is a handful of teams that could get there. I think there's just more of a chance that age and injury play a factor with Tampa, whereas with the Chiefs, they don't have a lot of guys who are on the other side of 30. I mean, Kelsey is 30, but he's been incredibly durable throughout his career. Hill's a young guy. Mahomes is young. All these guys out on the offensive line are young. I think it's more likely that Kansas City just comes out of the AFC than Tampa. Now, I will say, and I actually said this on my podcast, Stacked in the Box, yesterday, I never pick a repeat Super Bowl. I just don't. And in fact, in my article on Fantasy where I picked every game for the year, which was madness, I picked Kansas City and Green Bay because I think that if Green Bay is back with Rodgers, I think they're actually the better team. But with all this stuff going on with Rodgers, I will say, if there's ever a year to pick a repeat Super Bowl, I think it's this one. I mean, if Tampa's healthy, they're probably the most talented team. And then in Kansas City, at least in the NFC for Tampa anyway, my thing with Kansas City is who's beating them in the AFC? Is it going to be Buffalo? Because Buffalo's pretty much the same team, and the Chiefs boat raced them twice last year. And I would argue the Chiefs are better now with this offensive line that they've retooled. Cleveland, I like Cleveland a lot. But I just look at Baker Mayfield and say, is he beating Mahomes in a playoff game? Is he going to go in there, probably to Arrowhead, and score 35 because he's going to have to? So, hey, look, the odds say we are not going to have a repeat Super Bowl. And if I had to pick one team that does not get there, again, because of the age, the injury concerns, I would say Tampa is the more likely one.
Well, we got a lot of time to figure it out on the field between now and February. We plan on having Matt Verderame back with us a bunch of times between now and then. Matty, continue to enjoy your off season. It's short. Before you know it, camps will be opening. But take a couple deep breaths, and we'll get you back on when the camps get back underway. Thanks, bud.
Thanks a lot. Take care, guys.
Matt Verderame does a really good job. Good podcast, and you got to read them on fansided.com. And it's probably up there. I haven't seen it, and I do go to Fansided. But he has already picked the entire season. Every single game. He does it every single year. You need to know who's playing week 6, the 4 o'clock window. Oh, he picks all those games. The Sunday night game on week 12. Oh, he picked that game. He picks every single game.
That's a win. I hope he has the Eagles at 8-9.
That's an L. Sorry about that. That's an L, Johnny Mac.
I hope he had the Eagles at 8 and 9. I have to check this out.
We
now.
should have asked him
Yeah,
that. Well,
yeah.
we'll get him out again before the season starts. John McMullen, Jonah McDonald, your Mac and Mac guys will come back, put a bow on the show here on Birds 365.
I get scared sometimes.
Of a lot of things.
Joining in.
Decisions.
The dark.
The dark.
But I once heard someone say,
But as I always say,
it's okay to be afraid.
as long as you face the fear.
And keep moving forward.
Wherever you are in life, count on the name trusted in insurance for over 80 years. Independence Blue Cross.
The savoring taste of a good bag of beef jerky is so enjoyable at any time of the day, as long as you can find it. Here's what we suggest. Pure Bull beef jerky is our answer, and soon it will be yours. Locally produced in the Philadelphia region, this high-quality, healthy protein snack is easy to secure. Go to steersnacks.com, and you'll see hot garlic, tropical heat, Pure Bull dry rub, and our favorite, Huck and Fod. What's that? Huck and Fod. Go now to steersnacks.com.
Welcome to the Wildwoods, the perfect place where you can safely do everything or nothing at all. Catch a wave, take a nap, go for a drive, grab a bite. It's your vacation, and we're doing everything we can to make it a safe one. The Wildwoods. Your vacation, your way.
The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 98, is a proud sponsor of The Labor Show with J. and Krause every Saturday night from 6 till 8 p.m. IBEW Local 98's highly trained and superbly skilled electricians are the best in the business, setting the highest safety standards in the electrical industry. So when you're planning your next industrial, commercial, or residential project, choose an IBEW Local 98 union contractor. Learn more at ibew98.org.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
This is a key. It's a family tree. It's a pair of wings. It's a secret handshake. And a ticket to anywhere in the world. It's more than a uniform. It's the door to a world most people only dream of. There's Strong, and then there's Army Strong. Try it on at GoArmy.com.
Coming down the home stretch of a Wednesday edition of Birds 365, McLean and McDonald. McMullen and McDonald. I'm thinking John McLean. Here with you.
Different Johnny Mac.
I'll see if we can get Johnny Mac on before the week is over and done with. If not, maybe next week.
Hey, real quick, Jody.
Yeah.
Before you chime in, because I just saw during the break the name Ertz trending. I got excited on social media. Did it finally happen? No. Julie Ertz.
Julie, what's Julie up to?
Named to the women's national team Tokyo roster.
Very nice.
So that's why. So congratulations to her.
Yeah, that's going to stink if Zach doesn't know, A, where he's going to be playing, or B, the fact that he can't go over and watch his wife compete for an Olympic gold medal. Yeah. He's kind of out in nowhere land, isn't he, these days, Mr. Ertz? Sorry to say that, Zach. Hope your golf game's going well. That's the last thing I wanted to bring up, Johnny Mac. We kid a couple of our guests who are good enough to come on, and they know when we pimp them, we're just having fun about playing golf, because we're on in the morning when people like to get out and beat the sunshine and get those first few holes in before it starts to get hot, which, by the way, today it's going to be phenomenal. That's one of the reasons why I'm asking you this question, because you can play it any time during the day. It's supposed to be comfortable and no rain and everything. So if you are getting out, hopefully
it was
you have a good
downright chilly this morning when I took the dog out.
Had the dog out. It seemed like it was, a good little chill that's going to get warmer as the day goes on, but not get crushed by the sun and burn people to a crisp. Are you a golfer at all? I've never asked you that. We talk about our guests as to whether they're golfers or not, but I've never asked Johnny Mac if you're a golfer.
I'm a golfer. I'm not a good golfer. No, I don't play that often. I probably play three times a year. But I can hit them. I can hit it a long way when I actually hit it right. But my short game, Jody, disgustingly awful.
You need some time with Phil Mickelson. Flop shot, not your strength.
Oh no, I'm terrible. I'm terrible.
Either
I hit that thing 300 yards, or I'm screwed.
I used to play, no mas. I haven't swung a golf club in anger in 10 years, but I used to play.
And more like 250. I'm not hitting it 300, but I can hit it a ways.
Very, very nice. Even when I played regularly in my 20s into my 30s, I never got it out anywhere near close to 300. But I used to be able to hit it straight. Are you going out today? Are you going to the driving range? You're going to get 18 in? Is that in the John McClain future of the day?
No, Johnny Mac. You keep calling me John McClain. I feel bad because you got John McClain on the
mind. My bad.
No, I haven't been out there probably in over a year, so it's been a while. I gotta hit the driving range. I'll do it at some point.
There you go. Do it today. What the hell else you got to do? Take the dog with you when you go out and drive.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to dictate your day, Mr. McMullen. Feel free to do whatever the hell you want.
Because the back, you got to get the back right too. You got to get out to the driving range first.
Very nice. Stretch out the back. Do whatever you got to do today. Just make sure you're back here in 22 hours. Both of us will figure something out to do for the next 22 hours, right?
I'll figure something out.
We both will. And I promise you, we will both be back in 22 hours right here on Birds 360.